Hi everyone, it is Liz here from Ambitious Adulting, and the Ambitious Adulting community is where I simplify personal finances for Canadian millennials. In this video, I interviewed Reuven from AwardPool, and we talked about how we started the company, NFTs, investing in general, and also real estate. I learned about AwardPool from Equivesto, which is an equity crowdfunding platform here in Canada that makes it easier for day-to-day Canadians and millennials and anyone in Canada who wants to learn about investing in private businesses, and also the platform facilitates investing in private businesses. So if you want more information, definitely check out Equivesto, check out AwardPool, and check out Ambitious Adulting. Let's dive into the video. Thank you so much, Reuven, for coming on the Ambitious Adulting channel and sharing your wisdom with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, let's kick off. What is AwardPool?
It's been an evolution, to say the least. So I started developing AwardPool actually almost a year ago, March 9th, 2020, right in the sort of beginning phases of the pandemic. I had just got off a plane from San Francisco, which just so happened to have the entire crew from the Diamond Princess, which was quarantined in San Francisco Harbor for a month.
Oh my gosh, you're like, stay away from me.
Yeah. So I'm on the plane. I'm coming back, and I'm talking to the Air Canada, flight attendant. She's like, hey, you don't have to worry. They're in the back of the plane. You're in business class. I'm like, well, that doesn't seem very logical to me. And it wasn't. I got sick. I was sick. I was sick with God knows what, probably whatever. This was before they were testing for it. And what's interesting is March 9th was the first day I felt good again, and I started building this platform. So in some ways, I was sort of inspired by that crazy sick period for about 2 weeks I had, but that's how the whole thing started.
So you thought about it in those 2 weeks, or you had thought about it before and then you had time in those 2 weeks to kind of implement something?
Well, the entrepreneur mindset is one where you're always looking for sort of the next opportunity. And before this had started, my business partner Alex and I were looking at doing a esports training facility. And needless to say, when the pandemic struck, the idea of opening up a physical facility to train people on esports seemed like a really bad idea. And so Alex and I were like, well, what are we going to do now? And even before I got sick, it was becoming pretty clear that the world was about to change. And this pandemic, or whatever we were calling it at the time, was going to have a dramatic effect. So while I was having these weird, hallucinations you have of being sick with a fever, I started thinking about my own, what I'm good at, essentially. And turns out what I'm good at is building stuff, building technical things, building websites, building complex websites. And so the question really was, what am I building? What am I opening a physical facility for when I should be building web properties? Because that's what I'm good at. That's my background. That's where I started my career.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I've run 2 online businesses now, and I mean, when the pandemic happened, I think everyone has that story, like, where were you when it happened? Or like, what were you doing? And I was actually abroad. I was in March 11th or whatever, when that was happening, I was in Europe, and things were shutting down there. And I'm like, oh, this is weird, but I didn't think it would come to Canada. I don't know why. I was just like,
yeah,
we're here. I'm like, oh, let me just get home and everything will be fine. I went to Iceland, and then the news that day was that the first case of coronavirus had landed from Italy, which is where I had just come from. And I was like, oh my God, was that on my flight? I'm like, was that us? And then, of course, it started unraveling, but I was like, what does this mean for businesses? Like, I was thinking about that a lot. And luckily, running online businesses, I was able to kind of just continue life as usual, which was pretty good. And I got pretty lucky. But anyone who asks, like, what business should I start? I'm always like, I think online businesses are the way to go. I think, like, everything is digital. And, of course, there's going to be some need and benefit for physical products and locations, but for sure, like, the future is online. And the more technical skills you have, I think the more employable you are. It's just, you need to have tech skills. So yeah, I can definitely kind of relate to that a little bit.
Yeah, it's funny. I love Iceland, by the way. The South Coast. I'm not so big on the Blue Lagoon, which feels like swimming in like toxic waste. But other than that, I love Iceland.
Yeah, I also really like it. It's super unique, and I could go on and on about traveling, but maybe after the call.
Yeah, I enjoy traveling too. It's one of the side effects of being an entrepreneur. I've had the luxury of being just about everywhere in the world. I think I lost count around 67 countries. But
Oh, amazing.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons I wanted to do online businesses, so that I could be remote, which I do often. The hard part is my partner manages a commercial company here, so I can do whatever I want and gallivant around the world and work remotely, but I want him with me. So I'm like,
yeah.
yeah.
It also gets a little harder when you have kids. I did a lot more traveling with my wife before the kids showed up than after. But yeah, it is what it is.
Well, that's good to know. I'm due in 4 weeks, so
Well, okay, yeah. Oh, you just go. There's
I'm
just
like,
a
goodbye,
window.
traveling. And part of me is also like, okay, it's whatever. We're in a pandemic, so I can't miss it too
Well,
much.
and there's that. So I've got 3 kids. So there's that pile of stuff that you put on like one cart you're trying to push to the airport. And there's this age where they're all in sort of in various forms of car seats, and it's like 15 feet high. But anyway, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about today.
That's okay. I mean, I'm like, founders, they're just like us, and that's the thing.
They're just like us, except for the fact that they work insane amounts of hours. I've been tracking my time on this project, so I'm roughly, give or take, a year in, just a little over a year, and I track all my time. I've managed to hit 4,300 hours in 52 months. Oh,
So
sorry,
what does that work out
52
to?
weeks.
What does that work out to in weeks? Or sorry, like how many hours per week?
That's roughly 85 hours a week
Oh
every
my
week for a
gosh.
year.
Okay, I'm not about that life.
And
Oh, okay, so
so
what are you building? What have you built? What is AwardPool?
So let's jump into it. It's been in a kind of evolutionary stage where we started, where we are today. It's a little different. I'm going to share my screen quick here, and it's often easier to show. And what I'm going to show you today is a little bit of a lot of things. I'm going to show you a bit of my deck. So if you're in an investor point of view, everyone needs a deck. So starting with the deck, and this is what I pitch, and it sort of tells you the background of it. And again, stop me at any time. I have a tendency to ramble on. So AwardPool, where we started and where we are has sort of evolved. We started initially with a focus on esports and sort of provided a platform that would essentially allow you to manage all parts of your sort of esports organization, from a league to a team to a player to marketing of the platform. And so we had all these tools that sort of facilitated everything you need. And one of the things that we did, and we didn't realize that was going to be quite as revolutionary as it ended up being, was we underpinned the whole thing with something called blockchain technology, specifically something called NFTs. So before I get into that, experienced team, and I got 2 partners. One of my partners, Ahmad, he's a gamer. He started a company here in Toronto focused on esports. He's one of the first esports facilities. He sold that to Amuki Esports last year. My other partner is a finance guy, CFO, raises capital, brings companies basically to the public markets. And me, I'm Reuven. I'm the technical person. My background essentially is in technology and building technology. My claim to fame, if you will, is in cloud computing. Back in 2003, I was one of the first to develop a cloud platform. We helped get Amazon's cloud off the ground in 2006, built a number of the most sort of famous cloud infrastructures around the globe, and ultimately grew that to about 800 employees, 100 million top line revenue, and sold it in 2015. Classic story of, bootstrapped, raised a bunch of money, almost went public, right before we were about to go public, sold it, et cetera, became an angel investor, which apparently every guy or entrepreneur who's ever sold anything becomes. I'd rather build than invest as an angel investor. And so I put together a team and we start building some new stuff.
Super cool. That world is so interesting to me. And I think one of the things I like about Equivesto is that it can kind of introduce everyday people and everyday investors into that world a little bit. Before, it was a little bit more exclusive to be an angel investor. I mean, it's still pretty exclusive. Um, Not everybody got to see that world, and I think that's changing a little bit with this. What do they call it? Democratization
Yeah.
of investing.
And so I've had some successes as an angel investor, and I've had failures, probably more failures than I've had successes, to be honest. And if I could give any sort of advice, is diversification. Is so the successes I've had a couple really big successes as an angel investor. One in particular did something like 40 times the money I put in back, and that paid for all the other investments that made me nothing. So
Yeah,
it was
that's so important for people to know. Like, they think it's just winning, winning, winning. I talk a lot about the stock market, and a lot of times I show, positive returns, but then I often tell people as well, it's not all rainbows and sunshine. Sometimes you take losses and you have to figure out your risk tolerance. And
yeah,
that,
there are losses, and if you're batting 100%, then you're basically Warren Buffett. I don't think he even bats 100%. It's the reality is loss, and how you deal with loss is probably the biggest part of your investing strategy. And then secondly, for me, it's diversification.
yeah,
Never put all your eggs into one basket, and occasionally a couple of those baskets will do really well. Like when I bought crypto in 2011, I had absolutely no idea that a few dollars worth of Bitcoin would be worth, I don't know, I think it's 1 million times more than it was back then. Yeah, was it smart or just dumb luck or both? I don't know, but it's the way it works. You just try enough things, and some of those things will work.
that's my philosophy too. People come to me and they go, how do I analyze stocks? How do I do this? How do I do that? I'm like, okay, well, here's the fundamentals. But honestly, sometimes I just bought things just kind of out of fluke and I just got lucky. And those are
Yeah.
my best performing stuff sometimes. Other times I do so much research. I get stuck on analysis paralysis. I'm going back and forth. Should I do this? Should I do that? And then it doesn't pan out. So sometimes you just never know.
Well, I think ultimately the best strategy is to buy and hold.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's if you start over analyzing stuff, it'll drive you crazy. And what's the fun of that? Every one of my best investments are things I've held for a period of time.
Yeah.
That's
No,
the
that's a
reality.
good tip.
Yeah.
All right. So
But
this is
back
the
to the
team.
company. Back to the company. All right. So I totally off topic for a moment. That's what I love about these things. So the esports space, gamers in specifically. So we initially focused on a very narrow area that was like basically the esports sector. And this is, if you think of like professional sports, you've got like the PGA, which represents like a few hundred golfers. Then you've got millions of casual golfers that golf on the weekend. And the gaming space was similar. There was like a few hundred really good gamers and 2.7 billion gamers that played some online game every month. And then it occurred to us, like, why are we going after a few hundred people when there's 2.7 billion gamers spending $159 billion in games last year? Just to put this in perspective for a moment, FIFA, the organization for football in Europe, makes more money now from video games than they do from the actual sport of soccer. And that just happened last year. So it's massive. When you look at gaming, it dwarfs most other areas of entertainment and sport. And for just as an example, the entire world's income on a good year for movies was something in the realm of 40 billion, right? This is multiples of that in terms of gaming, and it's growing at orders of magnitude faster. And so by 2025, there's an estimate of about 256 billion going to be made in the gaming sector. So what we realized quickly that we look for an intersection of trends. And to be successful as an entrepreneur, you have to sort of do a few things. And this applies both for an entrepreneur and an investor, because you're looking at the same stuff. What you're looking for is an inflection point of multiple trends, right? And what you're trying to see is when those trends intersect with each other. And if you can be at the intersection of those trends, that's where the opportunity are, whether you're an entrepreneur or an investor. So what we quickly saw We created this platform. We got some traction in the esports space. We realized that, we were sitting at the intersection of esports, which is socially driven, participatory. People at home are able to sort of interact with the game, with the sport itself. It's high growth. Marketers loved it. It was a highly lucrative sort of demographic. We took some of the best parts of pro sports, like data, Moneyball approach to data. It was well established, and we took team and sports management and created this concoction. And what we ended up coming up with was this sort of platform that kind of gamified the ability to interact with gamers. So when a marketer initially would interact with a gamer, they would show them a video. Maybe you watched a video on your favorite mobile game, but there was no real interactivity. There was no engagement. Once you saw that video, you weren't going to do anything with it. You weren't coming back. So what we created was this mechanism to say you can engage these gamers to do things on an ongoing basis. And that fell into two general buckets. Social, go like something, go tweet something, go do some sort of TikTok challenge, whatever, but also play games and get points and gain points for all those things that you're doing. So when I like something or retweet something, I'm getting points. When I'm playing Fortnite or my favorite game, I'm getting points. I'm getting awards for those points. So if you place first, you're getting a badge or an award. When I do something, I'm getting some points, and those points are tokens on a blockchain, or those awards are NFTs on a blockchain. Those are unique. Those are tradable. Those are valuable these days because you can take those points and you can redeem them for other types of points or tokens or cryptos or Bitcoins or whatever. So there's real value being driven by these things. Then all of a sudden, 2021 pops up and the world goes absolutely insane for something that we didn't even think was even going to be a big deal, NFTs.
Yeah, I am very, very curious to learn more about this because sometimes you see things and you're like, okay, you might jump on board to learn about it. And then you might be like, this might fizzle out. So should I invest my time and energy learning? NFTs is something that I'm like, I think this is going to be around. It's not fizzling out, and I need to learn about this.
Absolutely incredible. I don't even know. I've never seen. I was the former cloud guy. When cloud was a thing, it became a huge thing for a while. This dwarfs it. Like I've never seen any kind of phenomenon take off quite so quickly. And so, long story short, our system, as I said, is based on the concept of a non-fungible token. Real mouthful there. So let me explain.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds crazy because it is a little crazy. So let me do my best at explaining what fungibility and non-fungibility is in the world of currencies and commerce.
Yes.
So a fungible asset is something that is basically the same and interchangeable. So look at dollars. When you have a dollar, there's no difference between the dollar, a US dollar you have, and a US dollar or Canadian dollar, I have. So all dollars, are the same. All pounds are the same. All Bitcoin are the same, right? They're basically a representation of something that is fungible. They're interchangeable, and there's no difference between any of them. Now, non-fungible things are unique. So non-fungible things, think of, I have a fungible asset such as a dollar, and I'm buying something from you which is non-fungible, an apple. That apple can be green, that apple can be red, that apple can be sweet, that apple can be old, that apple can be any number of things. It's essentially unique. There's similarities between apples, but generally speaking, there's no two apples are identically the same. It is non-fungible. Now, in the world of crypto, non-fungible things can then take on new meanings, such as digital assets. A trading card, for example, is digital. A piece of art that's digital and limited in edition. So now in the digital world, I can say that there's only 100 of this particular pieces of art that have ever been created in this particular format, and that gives it a limited edition. And moreover, as a non-fungible item, I can then define that there's certain attributes that the owner of that asset can have. So for example, let's say I'm a musician. Back in the 1970s, when you got a album, one of the big drivers for an album was album art. It's a big, giant, round piece of plastic that had a cover that was actually cool to look at. And inside that was a book that gave you insight into the musical act. In the 90s, there were little booklets in your CDs. So in a non-fungible world, the owner of that particular asset can now have a unique graphical illustration that goes along with the music that gets unlocked. Also, it can unlock behind the scenes. It's the Taylor Swift inside video of how she produced her album. And only you, as the owner of that NFT, can have access to that. And if there's only one of 10, it's highly valuable because there's only 10 to be had. So you've got limitations placed on it. Now that can be done in any number of different realms. That can be done for sports. You could say an NFT represents not only a player, but it could represent a season ticket or access to a particular sporting event in the form of a ticket that you have. Now, if it's mintable, maybe it means that NFT hasn't been redeemed yet. I don't have I can use it to go to a concert or redeem it for some printed T-shirt or something else. But then again, someone else might have already claimed it. So then it's not mint condition. It's like the box was opened.
Right.
But then again, it could only be one of 10. So there's still value in the fact that even though the T-shirt's been taken, the element is still unique in the fact there's only 10 of them.
This is so strange to me. Maybe because I am not someone who would consider myself someone who collects things. I don't really care. Is it just for people who care about being collectors?
No, well, that's where it started. So there's the crypto space in particular has been dominated by speculators. Like it or not, the reason why Bitcoin is worth what it is and other various cryptocurrencies are worth what they are is purely based on speculation. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping that this goes up in value and there's a limited amount of them. There's only 18 million or 21 million Bitcoins that will ever be created, and therefore each Bitcoin is going to have value. It's speculation. Like it or not, its primary drivers and nothing more than that. Right. What differs in the NFT world is it's no longer purely speculation. Sure, there's quite a bit of speculation that your favorite artist is going to be more valuable than some other artist. But now we've got the ability to attach it to other digital things. We've got the ability to say it's not only a random collector's piece of art. It can be something that unlocks other forms of value.
Right.
And that's where we get really, really interesting. So it turned out that a lot of the things that I built in my system could be used for a lot of other things beyond just the awards. So, for example, one of the big downsides of the sort of space has been the fact that it's expensive to mint these tokens. So the predominant platform for NFTs has been something called Ethereum. And to mint an Ethereum token right now, because of the popularity and the speculation of Ethereum, costs anywhere between $30 to $50 per. So let's say I'm an artist and I want to mint 1,000 of these things. I've got to actually pay between $30,000 to $50,000 for something I may or may not sell, which is crazy. So we being a startup said, well, we can't afford to go and pay $30 per mint. So we came up with an approach on a secondary network that allows us to do it for fractions of a penny, which turned out to be really valuable in a world that said, oh, I want to do this, and I want to do this at a cost-efficient basis. So we can mint those when and if needed. The other thing we did is we can mint those not sort of before, but if and when someone pays with real old-fashioned money using your credit card, not some convoluted cryptocurrency setup that requires you to be a technical genius. Right. So we made it really simple. And another thing that we did is something called custom attributes. So because it's digital, we could define that you could allow for sort of the tradability and the original owner of that thing to get paid every time it was traded. So think of like the old, MP3 era where people were stealing music and trading them amongst each other. The problem with that was there was no way to sort of pay the original owner of that content or asset based on subsequent trades. With NFTs, we can define an attribute that says, here's a royalty on anyone who gets, was part of the original production or owner of that asset. So I might sell it for $100 today, you might sell it for $1,000 tomorrow, and someone might sell it for $1 million, next month. The original owner, if they said they're getting 30% of any subsequent trades or royalties, is still making money at trade after trade after trade, which was
because there's a way to track it.
Exactly.
So there's a huge benefit for the original creator to then, because they get this passive income through royalties.
Exactly.
Regardless of what happens down the line.
And that was never possible before.
Right.
Because there was no mechanisms to define that in a transparent way. So in a lot of ways, the NFT has become the most useful. It's a killer app for the blockchain beyond just blind speculation that's going to increase in value. But there are also downsides. And one of the biggest, there's two really, really big downsides to this technology. One is the eco component. So there, just as a brief sort of overview of blockchain technology is based on this concept of proof of work. Proof of work essentially is this idea that the person who has the most powerful computer gets to do the transaction and therefore gets paid to do the transaction. And the way that that works is you're running this algorithm that basically is doing a complicated basic computation to solve a problem for the only purpose to prove that you've got the most power, which is just absolutely insane. It means I'm burning through huge amounts of electricity, most likely fossil fuels,
right,
destroying the planet just to prove that I get a powerful computer, which is nuts.
And yeah, I have read that I call myself an eco warrior. There's like a ton of energy that is required just to run all these computers, and like the mining, I still don't fully understand it, but I do know that it's connected to the environment some way or another.
So the miners are essentially solving problems, and they're doing it, and they're getting rewarded for those problems in Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever the crypto of that particular blockchain is. And ultimately, the biggest blockchains are using more electricity than a lot of countries at this point. So what my background in cloud computing, I built data centers, and I realized that the cloud computing infrastructures that I built in the past were essentially destroying the planet. And I want to learn from my mistakes. I don't want to go down that road again. And so when I looked at building this system, like, how can I build a system that's actually ecologically friendly? So we set on a platform called Cello that actually uses something called a proof of stake. And a proof of stake algorithm is based on the person who has the largest stake or backing or investment in the given platform gets to make the transaction. So if the person with 10 Bitcoins, for example, is not currently doing something, they'll get the reward and get to do the transaction, which ultimately uses a lot less electricity because they're not chugging away on ridiculously complicated algorithms for the purposes of proving who's got the most powerful computer. So it uses orders of magnitude less power. And the next thing we did is we tied that to a carbon neutral offset. So when a transaction happens in the platform, we are essentially doing an offset on the carbon, which in simple terms, we're planting a tree. So
okay, yeah, I was like, how are you doing this?
Yeah, we're basically planting trees, right? And so every time something happens, we're basically planting some sort of tree. And we can track that. So not only are we carbon neutral, we're carbon positive. We're actually creating a better world based on this technology.
Where are the trees? Are they all in one forest?
All over the world.
They're all over the world.
Yeah, we're partnered with the Cello Foundation to do that. And this doesn't just feel good, it is good. So we've got all these things that are really helping this sort of cause. And then the last thing that we're doing, and this is the craziest part of the whole scenario, and this is something as an investor you're going to have to watch out for. It's something that I've called survivability. I have no idea if it's a thing. It's a thing to me. So you might have heard about 2 weeks ago, there was an NFT that was sold for $70 million, right? It was a random piece of art, and that number is astronomical. It's crazy to say the least. And here's the craziest part of the whole thing. So I've sold someone some art, and that art is hosted on a web server somewhere, like all things on the internet. Now I've made my $70 million. There's no reason for me to host that art anymore. I shut off my web hosting. Guess what happens to that art? It disappears.
Yeah.
It's crazy, right?
I've had these questions because, and I'm sure you can answer them, but what's to say someone couldn't replicate it? Like, someone smart enough that can, encrypt and do a whole bunch of stuff and hack and be like, oh, I'm just, there's like 10 copies, and most everyday people can't replicate that. It's like there's 10 copies and they have all these conditions in place that make it unique. But I'm sure there's people out there who'd be like, I can recreate this and just like sell the black market version.
100%. 100%. And so that's where the next two elements come into play. So first of all, we're using something called the IPFS, and this is a mouthful, the Interplanetary File System.
I feel like I was on a spaceship with that.
Yeah,
Interplanetary. Like,
yeah, going intergalactic planetary. Anyway, it sounds like a Beastie Boy song or something. But the reality is, this is a decentralized file system that exists outside of any centralized hosting provider. So let me use an analogy. Let's say I want to send a message to my great-great-grandchildren 200 years from now. There's a couple things that are going to pose a problem sending a secret message to my grandchildren 200 years from now. One, I'm not going to be able to get hosting. I'm long since gone, so I'm not going to pay for the hosting. Two, if I'm using, let's say, Facebook, who's to say Facebook even exists 200 years from now? The life expectancy of a tech company is like 15 years or less. So what we needed to do was find a system that would transcend and exist on the internet forever without the need of paying for ongoing hosting. So the Interplanetary File System is a decentralized file system that exists in the form of a blockchain that's distributed on the internet regardless of anyone paying for it. So it's fast, it's secure, and will never go away. And I don't know why why people aren't talking about this idea of survivability. So now, regardless if the person who created the NFT pays for their hosting of a file, whether it's an image, a video, a PDF, or whatever, it'll last. It'll last essentially forever. Mm-hmm. And then the next part is what you said, encryption. So the way blockchains work is you can see they're transparent. The same reason it's valuable to see that someone's trading my asset and I can get my royalties on subsequent trades. That transparency is also means anyone can see the asset that's on it, unless it's encrypted. So what we did is we used something called AES encryption, asymmetrical blah 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 encryption. And long story short, that's the encryption that like the U.S. government would use for like the FBI, CIA, NSA. And it's really, really hard to crack. And maybe in the future it'll be crackable, who knows? But today it would require 1 billion years of computation to crack it. It's about as secure as you can get based on modern technologies. So essentially what we do is we say that there's stuff that anyone can see, stuff we want you to see, royalties, maybe an image, and there's stuff that only you as a holder of that NFT can gain access to. As I said, there could be, valuable content, videos, downloads, whatever it might be, profit shares, and maybe that's locked and that's encrypted through, random letters and numbers that make no sense unless you are the token holder.
I feel like if somebody watched this in the past, they'd be like, what are these people talking about? Like even 5 years ago, they're like, oh my gosh, what has the world become?
Well, let me show you. It's probably easier to show. And this is me trying to explain it simply. Let me show you an example of
I think I've been following for the most part. There's a few things I'm like, I got to Google that later. But for the most part, I got it.
So this is an example. This is Van. We're working with a number of artists, and the easiest way to show artists is this. He's a famous artist. I don't represent Van Gogh. He's been gone for 100 years, but it's a good example.
He's like, where's my royalty from the grave?
Yeah, where's my royalty? I think his royalty's his copyright's long since expired.
Yeah.
He was born in 1853 in Zugert, Netherlands. So yeah, he's been gone a while. So we've got these different NFTs. These are created on the system. So you can get some details. You can see it. This is embedded. So what we've created is a kind of Shopify for NFTs. So you can kind of embed this in your own website. You're a content creator. You want to sell NFTs. How do you do it? Well, you got to be a freaking blockchain expert to do it. So we sort of took the approach that, well, how would Shopify do it? Well, they make it easy and allow you to do all the things, to purchase it. So you can choose to buy with your credit card. You can purchase with crypto if that's what you prefer. And bam, a couple clicks, you go there, you put in your credit card information, and you've got the sort of asset, and you bought it. It's put into your wallet, and the secret code to Stripe is 42, by the way. You must know. It's like the fake number.
Yeah, I have Stripe as well, like the
Yeah.
live
So
key and whatever. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm buying it. I paid $100, and now here's the important part. We've abstracted the complexities, so you don't have to worry about what the hell's a crypto wallet. We do all that for you. It places it in there. You've got it. You can trade it with your friends. It mints. It does all the minting. It does all the creation. You don't need to know how or why. And if you do care, you can export it to your favorite crypto wallet and do all that sort of stuff. You've been charged. We take, much like any other app store, we take a percentage, and you keep the majority of the revenue yourself and all subsequent trades. I've now successfully created a Van Gogh NFT in 2 seconds.
Hmm.
So we've got, this is the front end. You can customize it any way you like. We're working with, here's like an NFL version, so you can see like an NFL version. If you want to trade NFL cards, so art and sports has been a popular one. If you're a brand, you might want to do challenges, things like that. And then we've got a back end. So the back end allows you to manage all this stuff. So if you want to create tokens or currencies of your own, you could create a virtual currency. You could create a cryptocurrency or token. You can deploy it on different networks depending on what you want to do. You can customize the graphics. So you don't need to worry about all those things. You change your logos. You can preview how it looks. We render all the graphics, and you can add your custom attributes, all that kind of stuff. You can.
So is it still focused on esports, or are you going to eventually kind of open up the repertoire or the gallery?
Here's the interesting thing. Because we created this sort of esports challenge system, we've created a kind of gamification. So not only can you do these things for the purposes of getting an NFT, if for the purposes of art or media, you can do it as a reward for absolutely anything. So you could get rewarded for playing your favorite game, downloading an app, upload. So you're Coke, and you want people to play various games, Among Us challenges, but you can only enter if you scan your UPC code in the side of a Coke bottle. Or you could do we're working with some nonprofits who might want to do social media challenge. If you remember the ice bucket challenge from a few years ago, you could get points for dumping water on your head, and then those can be redeemed for gift cards and various other things. We could define start dates, and you can add products. So all the stuff we did for originally for esports can now be used for various other things. So you can get a Visa debit card for your points and get it redeemed. You can choose that you want a Adidas card, or you can say I want a pair of Yeezys from Adidas.
Right.
Whatever. So we handle all that stuff. So you got all kinds. You can say there's prerequisites. We can preview what that looks like. So that it can be a challenge. Do A, B, and C thing before you can get to X, Y, and Z, and all kinds of related activities. That's in a nutshell what we've done.
I feel like I'm stepping into the future here. And I mean, I think it's so important, especially for people who care about their finances, to know a little bit about what's happening and how the world is changing, because we need to keep up with the times.
It's amazing. So it's funny, and I think what you need to understand about entrepreneurship is it's iterative, and you need to ideate. So when I'm only showing a small portion of this platform. So just as an example, we created this mechanism to manage leagues and teams, right? So originally the purpose of managing a league and a team was to manage players and teams in the form of like a pro league. But there's a semantic difference in trading, let's say, a player between a team and trading a card between two users of a platform. Each of these teams in this in this system could be again an NFT. Each of those players within the context of this team are NFTs. So they're a way to sort of identify a unique attribute within the system, right? That then can become a trading card, or just could be a legally binding contract between the team and the player, right? Semantically, they're the same.
Mm-hmm.
One involves a royalty, the other involves terms of a contract to be paid.
Yeah. So how does kind of the end user use the platform? They create an account, or is like, what does that look like?
right now we're in a beta phase. So the users, we're working with a select group of sports brands, artists, and media companies to create these sort of offerings. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm showing you is kind of what those folks would see. And
exclusive access for ambitious adults behind the scenes.
Yeah, so you got to kind of I'm pulling away the covers here. Eventually, we'll make them more broadly off. We're in beta. What can I tell you? And then the end users, they're going to see depending on whether they're coming on mobile or whatever, they're going to see things that look more like this, right?
Right.
They're going to see their sort of the end user experience, and that's where where I think where things are, where we're going, and so I'd say back to your sort of thesis on investment and where the opportunities are, speculative versus true value. I'm sure you're having discussions on crypto because there's no hotter topic right now than the sort of crypto investment space. My takeaway is this: we're moving to a form of investment in the crypto space that isn't purely speculative any longer. Now, when you start looking at things like NFTs or certain blockchains that actually solve real problems, you're now investing in things that have real actual utility and real value. So when you're looking at doing these types of investments, don't do it purely based on speculation. You're going to get killed in this day and age. The days of 300,000% returns are done. Now the opportunity is to invest in things that actually are going to fundamentally change how the world works from a digital perspective.
Right.
If you find those opportunities, you will have 300,000% returns.
It definitely seems more tangible. I think I'm understanding NFTs faster than I understood crypto and blockchain in general. I'm still trying to work on that, but that was just so much more abstract, and there was nothing I could really hold on to because I didn't understand. NFTs makes a little bit more sense to me right now. So yeah, I mean, lots to learn. This is very, very informative. I like how it says no crypto experience required, because I think that's the reality for a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was trying to do. It's like, can my mother do this, right? And if it's too complicated for my mother to use, nothing against her. She's she's 70 years old, but it's too complicated for most people to use. And so what we really try to do is make it accessible to the broadest amount of users possible. I think these stories of $70 million crypto purchases of NFTs is a short-lived phenomenon, but the real value isn't going to be in the 0.01% they afford to drop millions on an NFT, but the way that the vast user base, the average user is going to be able to use it in the context of games, marketing, and other types of activities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for taking time to teach us about this. I think there's a lot to learn. Are there any resources that you can suggest for ambitious adults who want to learn more about AwardPool, but also in general, some of the technology that you're working with and, this world?
I'd say that you right now there's a lot of sites and opportunities. We obviously check out AwardPool.com, Tokencraft. We're blogging on the subject quite a bit. Sort of talking about a lot of things that I'm describing. Do like anything. Do your homework. I would predicate. There's an unusually large amount of scams in the crypto world. So if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Do your homework, right? There's no such thing as an easy buck, right? Yeah, you can be lucky, but be careful.
I don't understand the scams because I have an Instagram presence. I had to block anyone who comments anything like pretty much crypto or blockchain because I was getting hundreds of comments being like, my mentor, Bob Smith, doubled or quadrupled our money in 1 week. Reach out to him to get started with crypto. I'm like, why are you messaging me? Like,
that's one, even if that was true, the likelihood of that happening twice is slim. And if it does happen more than once, it's called a pump and dump, right?
Right.
It's it's like all those people who got killed on that Wall Street stuff. Yeah, it's just I feel terrible for them. They're all buying in after the thing had gone up hundreds of percent.
Right.
There's no such thing as easy money. It's just not hard work, intelligence, research, and time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I could do a whole other segment about like how easy it is to get scammed. I don't know if you know about these YouTubers that just stay on the phone with scam artists and then like expose how the scams work. People are just learning about how to get scammed like regular with gift certificates. Now you have to learn about how the possibilities of getting scammed through crypto. I don't even know how that would even work. So that's something else we got to learn about one
Well, it
day.
used to be, there's penny stocks. The penny stocks used to be the crypto of the equities market, right? There's always somewhere someone trying to manipulate something, right? And it's a shame. Greed is never a good thing, I suppose. But I think, and the other thing I'd point out, this idea of passive income, right? And I think it's a misnomer. Anything that's truly passive is probably not going to make you any money. Like, let's be honest.
What about these royalties that the original artists are creating?
They work their butts off to create those assets.
Yes,
right?
I do say passive income is not easy money. But eventually, after you've set up the systems.
Yeah, maybe, but it takes work to set up.
Yes, for sure.
Like look at these online platforms that you can set up on Shopify and other places. It's like I'm going to go set up a Shopify store and suddenly I'm going to sell stuff out of China and make a fortune. Or these folks doing stuff on Amazon where they're buying stuff on, if it's that easy for you, then it's that easy for everybody else. Mm-hmm. And just because someone else was able to make $1 million on it last year doesn't mean you're going to make $1 million on it this year. And you know why? It's because someone else made $1 million on it last year and is already doing it.
Right.
So it's the amount of effort you put into something is directly results in the amount that you get out of something. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's an ongoing effort, right? If I put 4,300 hours into this platform I showed you now, doesn't mean I'm going to put 4,000 hours into it this year. It means that I'm in a position to make a significant amount of money with a significantly less amount of effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, because I would also bring in real estate investing into this discussion. I have a rental property, so I do make passive income, which I would consider pretty easy, but the upfront work, for the down payment was hard. And every now and then I have to fix things. So, but
yeah. I also own a number of real estate investments.
So that's passive income.
Oh my God. So I own two different approaches. One was a single family home in Jacksonville, Florida. And I bought it after the housing crisis. I think it was like 2011 or something. And basically, I don't know if this is good or bad, but it is what it is. I bought it from like foreclosures, right? And I feel a little bad. Somebody had to lose their house, I guess. I didn't really think about it at the time, but later it seemed a little bad. But that's I guess the way real estate works. So that ended up being a really good investment because I had a property manager in Jacksonville, and they do most of the work. Really, the only work I need to do is when something breaks, because it's a 40 or 50-year-old house, so there's always something breaking. But I'm not really doing
my house is 120 years old, and it's a constant adventure.
Yeah. So, but I've got someone doing that, so it's about as passive as investment as I can possibly have. And I'm doing probably, and if you're into cap rates, I'm doing about 20-25% cap rate, which is pretty good. Mm-hmm. And the vast majority of the income on that thing would probably be appreciation because I bought it from a foreclosure.
Yes.
And
after the housing crisis, did you say?
Yeah, housing crisis in Florida. So, yeah. And the other thing about Florida, and I'm being brutally honest right now, Florida is a red state. So if you're buying investments and you're a landlord, don't ever buy in blue states. The tenancy laws aren't particularly friendly for landlords. And I know I sound terrible saying it, but it's true. And if you're an investor, it matters. If you're gonna buy passive real estate, always buy it in a red state. You'll make way more money. The other thing, I also bought a small hotel in Madeira Beach, just south of Tampa, Clearwater area. and that was totally different. It was basically an Airbnb style place. I had 5 units. It slept about 40 people. So you're basically little condos essentially.
Yeah.
And that ended up being crazy amount of work. And it was the part with that, I kept having to get new property managers. Things would break on a daily basis. People would get drunk and fall off the dock and blame me for it. And every crazy thing you could ever think of.
Do you still have it, or you got rid of it?
I sold it last week.
Congrats.
Last week, literally. And yeah, that was, I wouldn't say a nightmare, but it was a hell of a lot of work. And I luckily the real estate market has gone berserko. So it sold in like 5 minutes, and I'd like.
It's so wild. I'm in Canada. I'm just outside of Toronto, and the real estate market here is also just insane. But
well, actually, I'm in Oakville.
Oh, okay. I was like, I thought you were Canadian, but I'm like, okay. I mean, I guess he's investing in the States.
Oh yeah, sorry. I've got my philosophy. I own property in Ontario as well, obviously, but that's a whole other can of worms. But if you're looking for passive, and cheap, I would say US for sure.
Yeah.
So that sold really quickly, and that was a lesson. So if I could learn anything from the single family home, way easier than the Airbnb for sure.
You have so many fun stories, and I mean, just to wrap up, everyone, we've covered so many things, but check out AwardPool, check out their blog, do your research, don't get scammed, and understand your risk tolerance. If you are starting off in your investing journey and you're like, I have a savings account and I now want to invest, I don't know if real estate or NFTs is the next logical jump for you. But what would you say to that?
If I was 20 years old and I'm starting to invest, I would invest in DeFi without question. That's, if you look at the current state of the investment world, there is nothing. You mentioned democratized earlier. There's nothing more democratized than the DeFi movement right now.
I don't even DeFi. What is that?
DeFi is the thing. So DeFi stands for decentralized finance, and it's finance based on blockchain. And right now, it is if you're looking, there's a concept called yield farming, and if you're actually looking for legitimate, again, be careful, do your homework, blah blah blah. But if you're looking for legitimate opportunities for actual passive income that isn't going to, you're not talking millions of percent returns. You're talking like 10, 15, even sometimes 30% yearly returns, which if you've ever invested in the stock market, it's pretty darn good.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Look for DeFi. So DeFi is based on the concept generally of something called staking. So what you're doing is you're putting money, much like you would in like a GIC or other locked sort of asset, you're putting it into a locked blockchain-based asset that pays a yield on a recurring basis for the right to use that money for a period of time, much like a bond or anything else. Do a search for DeFi, things like Sushi Swap and others. Amazing. If you're young and don't put all your eggs in one basket, but that's definitely a basket you want to include.
Okay. Yes, I will be doing so much research and talking about that with my audience once I learn. Once again, thank you so much. I've literally learned so much on this call, and I can't wait to share it with everyone in the Ambitious Adulting community. Are there any final words, anything else that people should be checking out, your social media or your website? Yeah. We already talked about that a bit.
I'm RUV on Twitter, 3 letters, and I'm RUV on Instagram. And, feel free to follow me on those, and you can see my digital art on Instagram. And on LinkedIn, I'm Reuven Cohen. Feel free to, add me, follow me, do whatever you do on LinkedIn. I like to post on there as well. So I'm always happy to help. I mentor, I do all these sorts of things. I love to try to give back as much as I can.
Amazing. So RUV
on Twitter and Instagram, yeah, 3 letters. I'm an early adopter. What can I say?
I know. I was like, how did you get that? But
I know the founders of both companies.
Oh, dang.
Cloud guy. What can I say?
Oh yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much again, and I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.
Great. I appreciate it.